This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's True Ghost Stories. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Mekas. If this is your first time tuning in, please click subscribe, like, share, and comment or follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. Inside the sacred craft of exorcism. Joining us tonight is Archbishop Ronald Feyl Enright, a retired demonologist who has worked at the Sacred Order of St. Michael the Archangel as part of the investigation and assessment team of demonologists. Today, he leads a community of professional demonic profilers and clergy exorcists. Let's welcome to the show Archbishop Ronald Feyl Enright, which is a spiritual colleague and great friend of mine. And welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
So we've been having problems getting logged in tonight, and I'm hearing a little every now and then. I do hear a little bit of a feedback, but right now it seems to be calming down and stuff. So what is an exorcism, and what is its process?
Well, an exorcism is actually a ancient ritual that is said to drive out demons from those people who are possessed by them. The ritual has been around for ages. Every denomination has some form of exorcism ritual in place. And as a result, someone in that particular religious group would be assigned to handle just these situations.
And it seems like, in every culture and every part of the world, whether, the ceremony, the sacred ceremony, is administered by a priest, a shaman, a babalao, a witch doctor. It's been in our history for thousands, if not millennia.
Absolutely.
But what, with the work that you do, and there is a process to this, especially now, in our day and age. There's so many legal things going on. There's so many things that are required in order to make sure this goes smoothly, and not only that, but to vet the particular individual or client or victim, that is, to make sure that this is a legitimate case. What is the process for that?
Well, back in the early 80s, I developed a process, which is a very analytical approach, where we examine the individual who contacts us, and we try to find out exactly what we're dealing with. Now, the person has to obviously be willing to follow our directions as we investigate them and their surrounding areas. We have to make sure that the actual event is a demonic issue and not someone's imagination or even a psychosis, or maybe just someone who's looking for attention. So we have to filter all of these things out. And we do that, and we use a very analytical approach. I created this back in the early 80s. It's a long time ago. I am the chief exorcist for the Order of Exorcists. And we've been around for a very long time. I was appointed as a exorcist jurisdictional exorcist for our church group, our diocese. And as a result, we continued this tradition. As a result, we have members in 24 countries around the world. And my primary function is to make sure that our ministry of exorcism is being carried out. So, what I do basically is I examine all of the intakes that come in. These are people who are asking for help.
Mm.
And of course, I train all our investigators as to how to do a proper assessment. And as a result, when they do the first contact interview, there's a series of questions they have to follow. And as they're interviewing the victim, someone in their team is actually filming or taping the entire interview. And once the interview is taped, and once the team actually do their physical inspection of the house or the structure or whatever the place is, once that's completed, they would submit their evaluation report along with a psychological interview done by a psychiatrist and a medical checkup, which is a report that shows us that the person has no health issues.
Mm.
The reason being is that health issues and even psychological issues can mimic certain reactions in regards to the demonic behavior, such as demonic possession, or even demonic oppression, which is more likely than a possession. Possessions are very, very, very rare.
Yeah.
Extremely rare. So I'm really enjoying I'm enjoying this interview because every once in a while in my life, throughout my life, I've been able to hear things. I could hear things in the dark. I could hear people in the dark. And now I have this unique opportunity to hear myself as I hear an echo in my ear.
Yeah.
So this interview is really different, exciting, and I'm going to do my very best to carry this through.
No
So forgive me, Dr. Paul. I'm going to tell you that this is a challenge, but we're going to do this.
How bad is the echo? Is it getting worse?
It's loud.
Mm.
Every once in a while, I'll hear a high pitch, and and before this, I would hear and I could sense things in my environment.
Yeah.
And but this now, as I know, this is technical, and I also know that Satan, the evil darkness in the world, uses technology to throw people like myself off our game.
Yep.
And they make it very difficult for us to communicate in regards to what we're trying to share in truth.
Got that right. It happens to me all the time.
The battle of good versus evil is real.
Yes, it is.
And anyone who's listening or watching this interview will see that we are in the battle right now. It seems like the technology might be the problem, but the reality is that behind the technology is not Dr. Paul, but somebody who's very diabolical, somebody very, very evil in the darkness, and they're manipulating the controls.
Yeah.
This is very true. It very happens.
Yeah.
So let's
and before we move forward, do you want to try another option that we were possibly going to try before we went on start recording? You want to try that logging?
It's
rebooting?
We could try that. I mean, is that
We could, yeah.
Okay, we could try that.
That way it makes it a lot easier on you.
So much, Dr. Paul. Sorry about that.
No problem, man. No problem.
Greetings, doll lovers and horror fans. I am Master Dully, the Doll Master, inviting you to my house of dolls, where the dolls come alive and the horror begins.
So we're back. Lots of issues. Still lots of issues. You know, the evil forces are out there attacking us in every left, right, up, down, sideways, just everywhere. And that now begs the question, is the spiritual war that's going on. I feel that the spiritual war has been going on for a long time, decades, millennia, for a very long time. But it seems like this is getting the energy is heightening. It seems to be more prevalent now than it ever has been, at least in the recent years. What's your thought on this spiritual war?
Well, you know, it's interesting. It seems like the darkness always has and comes up with a new delivery system. If it's not the internet, it's something else, and it becomes very annoying after a while, especially when you know what to look for. Most people are totally oblivious to everything, especially when it comes to the darkness. I mean, let's face it, you know, we'd rather avoid any type of difficulty if we could possibly help it. And our human nature just simply tells us and guides us through life without questioning the consequences. This is where bad choices come into our lives. You know, we start making bad choices and bad things start happening to us. And all of this is not just an accident. I mean, all these things are actually happening, and they're happening and they're being manipulated behind the scenes. We don't even see the process, but yet we're being affected by the outcome. And it's my personal belief, which I happen to know to be fact, is that we are sharing this world with invisible entities. A lot of them are extremely dark. A lot of them are very harmful, not only to the mind, but also to the body. And when we talk about demonic possession, which is very rare, when that happens and when that occurs, the poor individual suffers. I mean, just goes through so much suffering and pain and anguish. And everyone within the family household, they also go through it because they see what's happening. And so, and this is the very purpose of the darkness. It wants to drag us down to a point where we want to just simply give up on life.
Yeah.
Now, it's bad enough that they direct our thoughts and our attention on things that are not important. And when they do that, we tend to lose focus as to the real things, the real issues in life, like love, like respect, like taking care of one another. Okay. But instead, our focus is being channeled towards the darkness of the world, all the dark things, the jealousy, the anger, the depression, the aggressiveness in life, not caring about anyone else but themselves. So, I mean, all these things start filtering through the darkness and comes directly into our minds. Some of us call this demonic oppression, where the negative thoughts are filtered through the mind, and we become part of what we believe is our perception of what we're experiencing. The reality is that our perception is not always what it seems to be.
Yeah.
It can be actually the opposite. And as a result, you wouldn't even be aware of the negativeness that you're putting out there. People, they pick up. We pick up. We have this incredible sense of empathy. And in doing so, we have this incredible sense of sharing our emotions and taking the emotions of other people. When this takes place, of course, there's a mass confusion. And that's what the darkness wants to do. It wants to confuse you. It wants to confuse you from where you're at. Okay, your whole thought process is completely messed up. Reason being is that the darkness has manifested itself within your mind, and you're thinking that all this negative things that you're thinking about or you're actually doing is part of your natural progression. In fact, to the contrary, these things are all around us, and we're being filtered through all this negative darkness. So the war of good versus evil is definitely real.
Yeah.
You can't deny it. And those people that do deny it, they are suffering from a deep state, in my opinion, of demonic oppression. Maybe they're putting so much emphasis on themselves, and which is very dangerous, because that leads to self-harm or to self-destruction, such as drugs, alcohol, substance, any substance that will alter your mood and your perspective. And it's very easy to get addicted to these things, because let's face it, life in what we see in the real world is not very pleasant. I mean, we're living in a very dark world, and unfortunately, there are certain segments in that portion of our society that you might see some light, but it's not as bright as it should be. The darkness seems to be taking over our perspective, our minds, and everything else. We have to understand and acknowledge that these things do exist, and based on that scenario, we have to be very cautious and understand and start paying attention to the little things, because the darkness can hide in plain sight. We might not even know that what we're actually involved in is part of its plan, a part of this dark. And so it gets to be really it gets to be very, very nerve-wracking, to say the least.
Yeah.
um,
And for people to help, and I correct me if I'm wrong too, and I'm sure you're going to agree with this, but it's very important that we concentrate on our thoughts and our intentions on staying away from that darkness, on these dark thoughts, because these dark thoughts will then also manifest within itself our perceptions and how we perceive the world around us.
The delivery system that the darkness uses is subliminal. And through the message that we are actually receiving and not consciously aware of, is coming through not only through our computers, through commercials, through the influence of other groups that may, not be what we call tradition. And as a result, it's very easy for us to get caught up into it. Everything that's subliminal is being used throughout, and it's all part of our technology too. The technology is being used to deliver the subliminal messages that are all negative, can be very evil, to a point where people are not caring about the simple things in life, not wanting to even know that things are wrong. There's certain elements that we just simply accept. Unfortunately, a lot of these elements are very negative and can be very devastating to us.
Yeah.
Demonic possession is extremely rare. Oh, demonic infestation is another story. That's where the evil demons, if you will enter a place, a structure, a home, a house, and will just make itself at home. Will start creating all kinds of crazy things. The people living in the house, the home, whatever the structure is, they will see things that could be described as supernatural. They'll see things moving. They'll smell certain things. They'll might even feel certain things. They might feel a thickness in the environment. Let's say maybe in just one room, there could be a real strong sense of an outer world type of scenario. You're like walking on the moon. You're on Earth, and you walk to one room to the other, and you're in a different environment, different world, different climate. In demonic infestation, there are occasions where the house will actually drop in temperature in certain parts of the house, where there'd be a noticeable change, 5-10 degrees noticeable. So much so that you could almost feel a gust of wind rush by you as you enter the room, and it's very alarming, to say the least. Of course, in our organization, what we do is we investigate and do an assessment, and we make sure that all the things that could cause these things can be explained. And if they can't be explained, then they fall into the supernatural definition. And that happens, we need to focus in and see it for what it is.
Now, through your experiences carrying out these exorcisms, without giving out information on the subject or the case and stuff, for privacy reasons, could you give us some of your encounters, your experiences, some of the things that you've personally experienced that were really just way off the top, crazy, scary, and disturbing?
I have understand. I've been doing this for, if you're not going to believe this, I've been in this ministry for almost 50 years.
Wow.
This year makes 49 years. Next year will be 50 years. That's 5 decades. Whoa. Amazing. In those 5 decades, I have hundreds of cases that I have been worked on, thousands of actual cases that have been directly involved with, from exorcisms, from demonic possession, to demonic infestation, where crazy things take place. There are 3 kinds of stories I could share. I could share the PG rating, I could share the G rating, or I could share the horrible XXX rating. Maybe that's did I skip a rating?
That's an R rating.
Yeah. In other words, off the charts. Okay. And everything I say, okay, I'm not my presence is not to convince people that these things are real. My presence is to basically share the facts based on what I have witnessed, my perception, what my people have witnessed, what they have reported, and that's the only thing I could do. As to whether or not you want to believe what I'm about to say, well, that's totally up to you. It depends on your, number one, your belief system. That's pretty much.
Yeah.
The second is your whole inner core philosophy of life. How you see the world, what your perception is of the world. There are a lot of people in our society that will refuse to believe that there are demons. A lot of people in our society, they don't even believe that there's no such thing as God. There are a lot of people in our society that will say that the paranormal and supernatural just simply is a figment of someone's imagination. And so as a result, it really depends as to where you stand and what position you take in terms of your belief in all of these things.
Yeah.
So I say once again, should we keep it kind of mild, or are we something heavier, or
I'd say heavy. I'd say heavy, but yeah, we can. I'm not sure what you're about to say, but
let me put it this way. Okay, a lot of things that I could tell you've never heard before. The reason being is that these things are basically kept behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear something that's shocking or even traumatic, okay, your whole perception of whatever we're talking about can change and just be altered just a bit, where your whole perception would be different. It could change a person. It could make a person doubt who they are in terms of
feeling good about themselves and feeling good of things that they see and how they perceive certain things. It gets really interesting because it really depends on the individual. Each mind, and this is interesting, each mind and perception of every human being that ever walked the planet is unique. We have our own perspective in everything. Sometimes we can come close to maybe a series of thoughts that other people may agree with. However, their particular perception is totally different. Maybe totally different. It's like if we were sitting in a room and there was a box in front of us that was on a table, and I gave you a pad and pencil, and I took a pad and pencil, and you were to write down what you see, how you would describe that box, and I would write down the same, trying to make the same description, if we compare notes, it would be so different because your expression of the way you express yourself would be so different than the way I would express myself, how I see certain things, what my perspective is. Maybe from my angle and from my point of view, I could only see two corners of the box. Maybe you could see three. Maybe I could only see maybe a two-dimensional image. Maybe you could see three.
Yeah.
Our perceptions are, even though we're looking at the same thing, we're looking at the exact same thing, but yet we're taking it differently.
Yeah.
So again, we could talk about something really.
Let's go for let's go for shocking.
Oh wow! Shocking it is. Okay, we're gonna, if you could picture this and try to come with me as I go through this scenario.
All right.
Majority of my ministry was dealing with people who lived in low-income areas, Skid Row areas. People who are like at the bottom of their rope, where they're just about ready to give up on life, and so they're just simply hanging on to whatever they can hang on to. And some of them wind up in Skid Row hotels. Some of them wind up in just living under bridges. Some people they find the way to cope with the horrible things of reality by using drugs, using various drugs that you actually inject, mind altering substances to alter their reality so they can't really see what is truly real and what other people can see. They're trying to just simply become numb to the point where life could become more bearable. Okay. We received the call. My organization received the call. And as you know, my organization, we only go out and investigate when we're being asked. We don't go out looking for it. Okay, a person that has some kind of demonic issue would contact our organization, and then we would go through the process. We go through an intake process. We go through an evaluation process. We try to make sure that it's a genuine, real scenario. And if it's not, well, then we have other referrals that we could make. On their behalf, we could actually make it directly to the whatever agency it is. However, what we do is we just simply wait. For the past 25, 30 years, we were receiving requests for investigating and evaluations of something strange happening in a city. And in this case, it was Los Angeles, California. Skid Row area of Los Angeles. Back in the day, if you will, there were at least 200 Skid Row hotels, and these 200 Skid Row hotels were built at the turn of the century, which means that there's a lot of residual happenings that may have taken place in these hotels, and they're still happening today. As a result, there was one incident in this one particular hotel. I'm not going to mention the name of the hotel, but a lot of people maybe heard of the story, maybe they read about it somewhere, or maybe they even experienced that they were part of what I'm about to say. And hopefully that's not the case, but it could be. It's very possible. We kept getting a report from, and this was the owner of a very large hotel. In fact, he owns a couple of them in Skid Row area. In fact, famous people have actually checked in, such as Al Capone, such as some celebrities. They've actually checked into these hotels back in the day when they were, a moonshine transporting illegal whiskey, and of course, it's a known fact that in downtown Los Angeles, like in most cities, there are underground caverns. There are underground dwellings or places that people have actually used. In this case, during the 20s, they used to transport liquor from one section, alcohol from one section to the city to the other underground. They actually had these tunnels underground. These tunnels would connect to other hotels and other buildings in downtown areas. Okay, well, this particular hotel had underground tunnels that were partly sealed, and the mob, the mafia, if you will, they were known to use these underground places to transport their alcohol, the liquor, from one place to another. And as a result, it was quite interesting that in this particular hotel I'm referring to, there was a lot of activity going on, very unusual activity. On a certain floor of this hotel, there was banging on the doors throughout the whole, and you could hear the sound throughout the entire hotel. Banging, banging, banging on these various, on this one particular door anyway, on the floor of this hotel. And of course, the room was vacant, has been vacant for 60 years, and no one has never entered that room. Of course, the stories are that people were actually murdered in this room, and a big crime thing and everything else went on back in the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And so as a result, there was lots of strange things happening in that room. And because of that, the entire floor, there was about maybe 19 tenants on one floor. The tenants would hear the banging from that one part of this particular part of the hotel. We were called in because not only because of the sounds, but other things started happening, and people started disappearing. That is, physically disappearing, and they couldn't understand where these people would go. Now, understand, these hotels, they are in such a place where they accept general relief recipients. These are people who are given, like, a hotel voucher so they could go in, have a place to, sleep, and stay with, and stay within the safety, if you will, of the hotel walls. They would stay there, 5-6 days, and then they'd have to check out and look for other resources.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of transients that would check into these hotels. And so as a result, the banging and people disappearing were mostly part of that portion of society, where people were either homeless and now they have a safe place to sleep, and then for some reason within 24 hours of them checking in, they would physically check out. What made this really interesting was all their belongings would be left behind. These people are indigents, and so everything on their back is very precious. Everything that they have, in their shopping cart is priceless. That's belongs to them.
Yeah.
For them to leave all their, precious things behind and physically disappear, and no one, knows where they went. It was just like poof, they were totally gone. Most authorities, they may hear rumors of these things happening, and you know what? That's been happening for years. I mean, people on Skid Row, have been disappearing, and a lot of rumors have stated about it was all about stealing organs from people who are homeless. They have no ties to their family, so they would sedate them, maybe physically sedate them, and then at that point they would remove their various organs. Now, a liver is worth a lot of money, and so other parts of the body are worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think it was estimated at one time that the entire body and all its organs is valued about $800,000. That's a lot of money.
Wow.
Now, of course, we're going with the kidneys, we're going with the liver, we're going with the heart. All these other things are extremely expensive. So people have been disappearing in these areas mainly, and again, it was speculation, but it's a pretty safe assumption that this is exactly what was going on. But in this hotel, they would check in and they wouldn't check out, and they would disappear, and not only from the hotel, but no one would see them go, no one would see them leave, no one would see them, disappear, and so they asked that if we could come in. The owner of the hotel asked if we could come in and do our assessment. Now, this was a really interesting case. I normally have people. I have laity who are very experienced investigators. They're professional, observant people who could actually see and report and collect the evidence that's needed in order for us to have some kind of case to prove whether there's something there or not. Yeah. So, I mean, I have all these people. I decided to go down myself because this was a very unique thing. I mean, I think in all my whole career, I've never heard of anyone disappearing in one location, and people kept checking in and they would disappear and checking in and disappear. The room was vacant for about 60 years, but yet there were people living in the room. They would go in the room, because, as I said, because the area and so on, and one would check in and they'd bring a friend or two and they would squat in the room. And these are people that would disappear. The first thing that we did was we went to the floor and we examined the room. The room was pretty large. It was like 15 by 20, which is a very large room. But again, you have to understand, this room had a bathroom, which was very unusual because most of the bathrooms are outside in the hallway. They have community bathrooms. Yeah. This particular room had a bathroom with the old-fashioned tub, with the 4 legs, on the bottom of the tub, freestanding tub, and so anyway, we examined everything, and we noticed something that was really peculiar. We noticed some kind of substance that was all over the place, and that was the very first thing we noticed. As soon as we walked in, okay, our shoes started sticking to the floor, like if we stepped on some kind of maple syrup or something, or some kind of sticky. So that's the first thing we noticed, but it wasn't so severe that it took over the entire investigation. I mean, we just acknowledged it and just kept on and continued to investigate this room and really examine it. I mean, closely examine it. And then it was suggested that we stay overnight and to see if we could actually hear the sounds that are coming from this room. And so that was also very heavily discussed. I will tell you that that we toyed with the idea, and the first reaction from our team was, I don't think that would be a good idea. But in order to really get to the problem, we have to really go a little further and deeper. And the sticky substance just simply trailed from the main room, which was this big room, to the bathroom, and you could see it. It was all seeped, sticky, and just all over the floor. And like if somebody just kind of sprinkled something that was some kind of sticky substance. It was interesting. But that was it. We didn't see anything else. The room was real dingy. Had these plumbing pipes that were overhead. Back in the 20s and 30s, they had to channel the water supply in the room, and they would have these pipes that would be suspended overhead. And so that's the only thing that we saw with the pipes and an empty room and the sticky substance. So we talked with the management and we decided to stay overnight to see if we could actually pick up some sounds. And so we did. Now, understand, this happened about, let's see, it was quite a long time. Well, it's about 20 years ago, maybe 25. Every time I close my eyes and open them, it seems like another year slips by. So I hate that part. But it seemed like maybe 20 years ago. It could be, maybe before that. I don't know. In any case, I only bring that up because I think it's really interesting to know that my team consists of 9 people. We had 7 guys, and the other 2 were female. And the females, they were very intuitive. They would walk into a room, they could feel what was going on, they could have a sense. We'd have one go in first, and then we have the other one follow, 10, 15 minutes later, and get their impressions, and then we'll see if their impressions would match. There's lots of people that are very intuitive in this world. You have a lot of people that are charlatans too, don't get me wrong, but there are gifted people that can actually feel and sense things. And so much so that these are the people that help the police department solve crimes and missing people and things this way. This is a known fact. So, this is not one of those believe it or not type of things. This is true. I mean, there are people, and it's said that we all have that ability, but there are people that actually work at it, so they become very sharp in working their gift.
Yeah.
Anyway, these two girls, I call them girls because they're probably women, I'm sure, or both. They would give us the impression, and then they would tell us what they feel, what they see. They see anything unusual, things in this nature. So they went in one at a time, like 15 minutes, apart. They went in, they spent a little time in there, and they came out, and the other one would go in, and then they would absorb whatever energy was in the room, and then come out, and then we had to have them report to us and tell us and give us their impressions. Interesting enough, I'm going to tell you exactly what their impressions were in just a minute. But before I do that, I do want to tell you about the other men that were involved. The other men were they were previously ghost hunters, of course, and they became our assessment investigators, which is a totally different thing. So they.
I just lost.
There
we go.
If there's like a substance that needs to be analyzed, we also have one of the 7 who is a chemist. And this was his trade. He was actually a chemist. And so he would collect samples, mostly mold or any other substance that's in the room. He would collect it, especially if it was very suspicious. This gummy substance was very suspicious. We had no idea what it was. So he collected that as well. As he walked out, we all gathered together, and then on the lower floor, I think it was the lobby, and we talked about what our impressions were. And as we were talking, it's quite interesting. One of the girls, they felt a very negative, something negative, like if it was pulling her down. And the way she put it, her legs were being pulled down, like if she's being pulled down to the next floor beneath her. And so her legs were very heavy as she walked in and then walked out. She was like barely able to stand and walk. The other girl walked in, and of course 15 minutes later came out, and she said that her impression was that she felt light. She felt like if she was a little bit intoxicated. She walked in the room and she felt intoxicated. The air was very thin, and she was a little bit off balance, and she couldn't quite understand, and that was the first time she ever experienced that sensation. So she didn't quite understand how to basically articulate the or label or classify the emotion or the sensation. But we made our notes, and it was about 7 o'clock in the evening, and we were still gathering and comparing notes. And then an interesting thing happened, and we heard something that sounded like a big bang. Now, I thought it was coming from outside because we were in the lobby, and the doors are open, so we just thought it was something outside. But it was a big bang, and you could hear this bang throughout the entire hotel. I'm sure of it. So my first reaction was to say, well, it's something going on outside. But the reality is, it was up on that floor that the big bang came out, because a lot of the tenants came out of the other rooms, and they were like, as they do every evening, come out and say, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? What was that?" And so we were drawn to go back up there, which we did, we basically tried to calm everyone down. And quite frankly, half the people we had to calm down was my team, because they didn't like that loud sensation as well. Anyway, we walked into the room, and interesting enough, we saw something that we were not expecting to see. That substance that was sticky, and it was like almost colorless, it was just really sticky type of gum type of sensation. We walked in there, and it was red. It's dark red, like blood. And there was a trail that went from the front door, inside the front door, going all the way leading to the bathroom. So we decided to follow this thing, and it was like a little trail of what appeared to be blood, and it was like little dots, and then a long string of this red substance. We walked into the bathroom, and we couldn't believe what we saw. What we saw was absolutely nothing. There was nothing in the bathroom. There wasn't even a bathtub. The bathtub had disappeared. Now, the bathtub, as you know, are bolted. At least, back in the olden days, they would bolt the bathtubs to the bathtub was gone.
Wow.
Okay. My first impression was, well, we were obviously in the wrong room. Maybe this is the room that we were meant to investigate and do an assessment. But the reality is, it was the room. It was the first room. I'm not going to say the number of the room, but it was the same room. And as a result, we looked at the place where it was the bathroom, and there was no tub. And it was really weird. There was a toilet, or what was left of a toilet, but there was no tub. And so we kind of scratched our heads, and then all of a sudden we heard another big bang. And then it was like as if you were holding a crowbar, and you were like just dragging along a cement surface, and you would hear the crickling sounds. And so we happened to hear that, and the bang, and then it started to go pop, 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 pop. And what that was, it was on the ceiling. And we saw a line going from one end of the corner of the ceiling to the other. And it was like a straight line. And it was pop, pop, and you could actually see the sparks, and they were coming down. This is the part where I say, believe it or not,
Yeah.
Whatever your belief system is. But this is what happened. We saw this thing. It just simply lined the ceiling. These popping sounds occurred. These light balls started to fall on us. And it was just like a one-time passover from one end to the other. And so we're all looking at each other. And I said, I think we should probably go downstairs, reassemble, and regroup, and get some impressions as to what actually took place. And we did. And so as we talked to a couple of the attendants on the way down, and they were telling us, that this thing happens almost every other night. The banging sensation, and even the popping sensation. Some of them said something about popping, because I mentioned like popcorn, when you hear like from a distance, you hear like pop, pop, not like a firecracker, but like a popping sound.
Yeah.
And they were confirming that this thing happens every other night or whatever. So we went back up to the room. It was a few hours later. It was like close to midnight. And so we went to see exactly what took place. It was interesting. We walked into the room. That red substance that was on the floor, it was kind of a paint substance. Like somebody spilled some paint in there, a little trail of paint. At least that's what it looked like. It was already dry, as if it was spilled maybe years ago. And it simply dried. Our first impression, of course, was it was like fresh blood. But no, it was some kind of paint substance. And of course, we were all very eager and anxious to go into the bathroom just to see if anything else has disappeared. And as we walked into the bathroom, 3 of our guys refused to go into the bathroom. And understand, these bathrooms, they're not very large to begin with. You could get maybe 4 or 5 people in the bathroom, and even then you'll be crammed up.
Yeah.
but at least maybe half of our team, they refused to go into the bathroom because there were certain things that were happening that they could not explain within themselves, and nor would they accept. So we went into the bathroom, and the bathtub was there, and the bathtub was dirty, and there was something in the bathtub. And so as we couldn't identify it at first because it was wrapped in something. So we first of all, we were shocked that the bathtub returned, and then more spooked, if you will, if you want to use that term, that there was something in the bathtub. And so, I'm probably missing a lot of details, but I'm just bringing up for what I could remember, and this is like a lot of years ago.
Yeah.
So this thing was like wrapped and in there, and it was really weird. I used to have he's a priest now, but at the time was a seminarian, and he wanted to unwrap whatever was in the bathtub. I literally touch it and unwrap it, and I said, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" And so he looked at it. He looked at me and said, "Yeah, let's do it." And he had his little tweezers, and he was trying to do his forensic thing, his opening the little wrap. And you would believe what was in that wrap. Unbelievable. Absolutely nothing. And yet it appeared to be something solid, but yet it was nothing in there.
Yeah.
And got kind of creepy.
Huh.
We left the room kind of scratching our heads. I had some of our guys take some pictures of the actually event. Now I think about it, I don't remember what year. What year were those? Remember those flip phones that would like open and they don't have any more?
Oh yeah, the Razor phones and Motorola Razor phones.
Yeah. And you were able, to actually capture images.
Yeah.
And we did. I mean, we got a lot of pictures. And as we walked out, we were going to do a final assessment, because we haven't really came to any real conclusions. And of course, because it was so late at night, we were going to stay and sleep in one of the rooms, which we all crowded into this room, and it was like roach infested. But we were able to this was the best room in the hotel, but it was roach infested, and I remember sitting in one corner and feeling things kind of crawl up my arm, and it was really I hate that feeling, especially when you know it, that you're in an environment that's filthy.
Yeah.
And you're in an environment where there are little critters and rats and bugs and roaches. And I felt this thing coming up my arm. And it was the room was dim because we were, some of us were sleeping, and I guess some of us were sleeping. I don't know. If you could sleep in that kind of environment, I felt this thing crawling up my arm and then coming down again and crawling up my arm again and down. And I looked, and we had lights, so we turned the light on in the room. The room had electricity, and so there was a light, and it was like nothing there. And yet I felt it, and I asked if anyone else felt it, and a few other people said they felt it as well. It was something, and I said, well, it's probably roaches. And they said, well, we don't see any roaches. There's no reason for these things to be crawling up and down our arms. And so we tried going back to sleep again, and then these things started happening again. And at this time, I realized that they were not bugs or insects or rodents or anything. What they were spiritual entities that were making themselves known. They were making their presence known. And so we actually felt an invisible entity going up and down our arms and other parts of our body, we felt the pressure. This is another point where you could, believe it or not, people that have been on the other side of the door, which we classify ourselves as, we see things that most people can't see. We feel things that most people can't feel. And we're all like that, basically, because we've been the unbelievable shock ability of the situation has already presented itself to us. So we've kind of created a kind of a hard shell over the whole experience. So we're almost anticipating it. And I always used to tell my people, as one of my mentors used to tell me, always expect the unexpected, because it's going to happen. And sure enough, it did. The following morning, we had a meeting with the owner, and as I said, he owns at least 3 major, really big hotels in downtown. And so I told him what we experienced, and he said he was afraid that we would confirm what all the tenants have been saying for so many years. Apparently, someone was murdered in that room, and it was a main focus of where people would go to be literally tortured. And I'm assuming, we said with a mob, perhaps, because they used to use the basement and they used to transport things, to and from back in the 20s and 30s. And the owner said, well, that's very possible, but actual full apparitions have been seen going in and out of that room. And the room is locked, but they didn't need to turn the doorknob because they would go through the door.
Yeah.
The apparitions would literally go through the door. So there were no real tangible flesh to actually see. And so, and of course, we were taking the word of the tenants that live on that floor. And so they would go in, and then they would hear screaming sounds, and then they would hear a big bang, which I have to assume was probably a pistol, maybe a shot from a pistol.
Yeah.
The pistols back then were pretty loud, and just one round could be probably heard throughout the whole area.
Yeah.
So no doubt that was a place where they would torture people, and I'm just assuming, we're all made this assumption that it had to be the mob, because who else would do that? Interesting enough, once a year you could go into that room and you could actually see the tub, and then the following day you'd go in there and it'd be gone. So it was like the mystery of the if I had to sum it up, it was the story of the missing tub.
Yeah.
But that type of thing, is believe it or not, is very common on the other side of the door where we happen to be at. There's one hotel in the main drag down in Skid Row, where people are actually seen throwing themselves out from the top windows.
Wow.
And I have a picture of someone actually doing that. I was there at the right time at the right place. And I have a photograph of a person jumping out the window. And what's interesting enough is the person is transparent. I mean, you could see through the person. And just before they hit the ground, the hotel's about 15, 16 stories high. So just before the person hits the floor, the ground floor, the body disappears. And there have been there's people right now who go, purposely they go downtown just to stand around and wait to see things like that. I was able to get I have at least one picture that's a genuine picture of somebody jumping out the window. This is, if you remember our history, stock market, when it went belly up, and people who are in that business would throw themselves off the top of the buildings because they have no other alternative. They feel that was the only way to end their situation, was to terminate their life. And so they would jump from this building. And it's interesting, this building has a history of people jumping from the top floor, and and then of course killing themselves in the process. This building has a interesting history of murders being taken place, various floors. This building has an interesting history of people, at least a dozen people that practice cannibalism.
Wow.
And which is really kind of gross, if you will. But they would not only kidnap people, but they would do heinous things and then wind up digesting them. And we only know this because we did an investigation. We were called on one of these floors to do just that, and we were able to find something that the criminal investigation team they overlooked, and I guess these were what appeared to be human bones. We saw several fingers. We saw a leg, and I remember that it's very clear. It was very spooky because in the room it felt like we were being watched. And you ever heard the old saying about the walls have eyes and ears?
Yeah.
And that felt like we walked into this room, and there were things that appeared to be bones, not animal bones, human bones. And then we felt the eyes just looking and staring at us. Interesting. The majority of these eyes were not at eye level; they were from the ceiling, looking down. I could remember another brief. I don't know how much time we have, but I remember another interesting story where I went. I was called to do, and I was a young priest at the time, to do an exorcism on an individual, and their family member called and wanted the church to send a priest out. So they sent me out because I volunteered. I said, "Hey, I could do it." At first, I thought it was a house blessing, and house blessings are, that's easy to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know I wasn't expecting to do an exorcism.
Oh man.
I walked into this hotel. At first, it's a downtown Skid Row hotel. Okay, in the outskirts of the center of Skid Row. So I walked in this hotel, and of course it was raining and pouring, and I was soaked to the bone, and just like you hear of these little ghost stories and stuff. But this actually happened. I walked in the building, and it was totally quiet. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. And as I walked into the hallways, I saw these what appeared to be dark shadows going up and down the hallway walls. And I'm looking at them, and I'm going, okay, well, interesting. And so I continued to walk through, and it was really quiet. And then as I turned the corridor, there was a crowd of people that were outside this one door. Each door represents a room. Each room is a place of residence where a person would live in. And so I approached the door. There was at least a half a dozen people outside the store as I pushed my way through and knocked on the door, then opened the door. I turned around and looked around, and the 6 people that I had to push my way through to get to the door, they, interesting enough, they just simply vanished. Now, I know that they couldn't just walk away. Okay, these corridors are long. They're long corridors. And it was just not even a second. I mean, I just turned the doorknob. I looked over my shoulder, and there was nobody there.
Wow.
These 6 people just simply vanished. I said, okay, that's interesting. And again, understand, I'm a young priest. I was assisting a bishop who was an exorcist for many years, and this was part of my training, is to be his assistant. So, but this is the one time I went solo because I thought I was going to do a house blessing, and it turned out to be something different altogether. I walked into the living room; it was packed with people. Apparently, people were they were from the neighbors, I assume. And they were just talking, a lot of them were Spanish. They were talking Spanish. I had other people talking other languages, Chinese. I mean, the room was packed with people. And then this lady ran up to me and she said, Father, I was waiting for you. We've been waiting all day. It's my daughter. She's over here. And she dragged me over. And stepfather was already in the room. I walked in, okay, and sure enough, she was laying on the mattress, and she was totally naked, completely naked, and the stepfather was leaning over her, and I said, well, let's get her dressed, and or at least let's throw something around, over her, and which they did, the mother did, and then she started. Looking at me really strange. That is who I call the victim now. Looked at me really strange and had these really sunk eyes. Her eyeballs were way sunk into her head. And she had an interesting odor. I'm very familiar with the odor that I was sensing. The odor. Years ago, I used to walk into morgues from different cities, and I would visit the morgue. And there's an interesting stench that comes when you're in, and especially if it's a fresh body that comes in that was found, days later, and it's just decomposing, and you can smell that flesh. Well, that's the kind of flesh I smelled from this girl. She just smelled like dead flesh.
Wow.
And I was startled, and I walked in there, and I was only there for like maybe a minute or two, and then I said I have to make a phone call because I have to call my church and tell them I needed help. I'm not going to do this myself. And so I left the room, okay, and they didn't have a phone, of course, and it was a public phone. This was a long time ago. They used to have these things called phone booths. And
Yeah.
have these things called phones that would hang from stands. And believe it or not, you could go to these places and actually push these buttons in order to make a phone call. And you had to put money in the machine. This is way back when, okay? And so I went to one of these devices, okay, which we call a payphone, and had wires and everything. Anyway, I dialed the number and I contacted the church. I told them I'm in way over my head. I said, I thought this was a house blessing. They said, we didn't say it was a house blessing. And I said, well, I had a little disagreement with them. And I said, I need help. I can't do this myself. And so they said, sure, we'll try to send you some help. Great. Okay. So I went back there, and sure enough, she was in the same position. That room was just so crowded. It seemed like there were more people in the room than before. And as I pushed my way through them to get to the room, I looked, and the mother was there with the stepfather and a few other neighbors, and they were around the bed, and they were crying, and they were like having all kinds of fits. And I'm looking at what I call the victim, and she looked like she was just falling apart. Literally, the skin was just falling off her bones. And at this point, I started to, quite frankly, to be very concerned.
Yeah.
In order to do a real, genuine exorcism, the actual ritual, you need somebody to read the responses. You need some type of support there as well, and then of course and then you could administer and actually perform the ritual itself. But to do that, you need a body. And if the body is there, it's just skin and bones, and the flesh that was there is just falling off the bones. It's a little hard to do what you set out to do, because the person has to be at least alive.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't. She wasn't alive. She was actually dead.
Whoa.
And the mother was on the floor because she had a heart attack at that point, and she was when the stepfather was like crying, and he was banging on the walls, and very, very, he's very, just falling apart physically, and yeah, and she died apparently, and that was the state that they found her. They found her with skin and bones, literally skin and bones, no fat, no muscle tone, just bones and skin that were supposedly skin wrapped around the bones. The police ambulance, they all came, and they took the body away, took some statements, and that was really quite horrifying.
Yeah.
Now,
when you arrived and actually first saw the body, did she appear like she was still alive?
Oh yeah, she was making moans, and she was screaming actually, and she was like begging for some kind of relief.
Yeah,
because obviously was going through extreme pain. She wasn't skin and bones. She changed her entire demeanor. She was no longer a person with flesh and blood, and living. This person, she was. When I walked in, it looked like she was a corpse anyway. She looked, she was dying anyway.
wow.
But she was moving. She was making sounds. People were trying to help. People were praying over her, and I just left. It could have been 5 minutes. to make that phone call. And when I came back, she was gone.
Wow. Now, when the authorities arrived to, take the body and stuff like that, did you get any feedback as far as after the autopsy, how long the body was dead? Because sometimes weird stuff
Nope.
happens. Like, oh
Generally,
wow.
we don't go beyond.
Yeah.
We don't go beyond the scope. We don't look at the forensic findings. We don't even look at the cause of death. It's not what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We would do an exorcism if we did a proper assessment. We covered all our bases. We try to have the medical community involved, and with our organization, we have a couple of medical doctors in our organization. We have psychiatrists, and what we do is we do our ministry, the ministry of exorcism. We don't do forensics. We don't do. We do collect evidence. We collect evidence to prove or disprove that there's some kind of demonic reason. There's some kind of demonic force that's happening, and it should get our attention. We need to do something. And regular assessment normally takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. It's a long process because we have to obtain medical records of the victim.
Yeah.
Also, psychological profiles have to be submitted. We have a psychiatrist who would interpret the various reports. They would give us their recommendations as to whether or not we should continue to proceed with the ritual, and that's basically what we do. Now, since I say that I'm retired, I'm really semi-retired. Right now I still have my organization. I have priests and bishops in 24 countries worldwide. I have a website, and I've created what's referred to as an international referral directory. And people that have demonic issues can go to my website and look for the individuals that are in their city. We have a listing of clergy, investigators, healthcare providers, even psychiatry. We have all these people that are willing to help, and their services are free.
Yeah.
They have their name would be listed in the directory, their phone number, their email address, and a photograph of what they look like. It's on my website, and we have all these members who are doing that, and they're worldwide. I have a podcast now. We just completed the 5th episode of our podcast, and what we do is we have a panel of psychiatrists, clergymen, and they're all experts in their field, and we have victims, people who feel they have some kind of demonic issues, actually feel that they have a case of demonic possession, whatever the case is. They contact our podcast producers, and then we get their entire detail and story on tape anonymously.
Yeah.
And we play it during our show, and then our experts, our clergy and physicians, they will put their heads together, come up with some kind of summary as to what their preliminary assessment would be based on the information that they hear. That's our entire podcast. Right now, we're having a weekly. Now it's going to be a weekly thing. It's going to be we're on YouTube and all over the various social media. So this is kind of a unique. I like to think it's a unique thing that we're doing.
Very. Yeah.
It's an extension of what my full-time ministry was. So this is like still part of my ministry, but it's just an extension because I am retired, so to speak. I do have several. I use a lot of platforms out there. I have at least a dozen forums on Facebook, different forums on Facebook. They're all tied to me. I created them, and I have people that are managing them right now.
Yeah.
And so that have demonic issues, they can go there and they could, post their questions or whatever. And someone from our organization would give them an answer. We'll post a response. We also have a prayer group, also on Facebook, an international prayer group. And we have members like all over the world, well, anyway, in 24 countries. And so, we're the organization, the thing that I created back in the early 80s is still, it's still active. And I've trained hundreds of clergymen and teams to basically duplicate what I created, from the first contact interview, which is the analytical assessment forms. It looks like you're doing a psychological profile, but what it is, in essence, it's questions that are directed to the victim in regards to what their symptoms are, in regards to what type of manifestations have they actually witnessed in the household, and what their health issues are, if they have any. And so we go through a series of questions, and after we do that, then the team would proceed to go throughout the house, investigate the house, make sure that there are things not in the house that could explain the sounds and sensations people are feeling when they enter the house. We have to make sure that it's a real supernatural event and a real type of entity, opposed to something that that may be created through natural means.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that this takes place. So that's basically what our organization does. I still have people that contact me almost on a daily basis with their situation in regards to demonic issues. I refer them. I do a mass mailing to all of my active members who are clergy, healthcare physicians, psychiatrists, counselors, and so on. I do a blast email to all my members, and so we get like maybe 2 or 3 cases a week, and so I do this on an ongoing basis. And then people that are closest to where the victim is located, the victim has to give us their name, their phone number, their physical location, what country they're in, and then we contact them after they do initial request, and that is requesting our services. They go on the website and there's a form they fill out, and then it goes directly to me. And then what I do is I look at it, and I reproduce it and send it off to our members in the various areas. And we do. These stories I told you are real. I mean, they're unbelievable, and you don't hear about these things because who would believe it? I mean, come on, who would actually? I mean, come on, man, really?
Yeah.
Would you believe what I'm telling you? I mean, who the heck's going to believe what I just told you?
Other than what Hollywood puts in their movies and stuff like that, it's like, people go, wow,
and the entertainment industry, they do really well in terms of entertaining. What we do is more horrifying.
Oh yeah,
Because we're there, we're seeing the actual real thing, and it's more horrifying than what you see on the silver screen.
Exactly.
I just gave my age away again. who says silver screen?
I still use it every now and then.
Okay, then I'm fine.
Yeah. You know what the word silver screen came from, right?
I'm guessing 20s, 30s. No, tell me.
Yeah, well, by using silver, by calling it silver screen, that's what you had to use in order to make the screen. There was, and even still today, some of the theatrical screen is they use a silver powder because it helps reflect the light. So, hence the silver bullet, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But that pretty much, I mean, wow, yeah, it's Ron, I want to thank you for sharing your information, sharing the your experiences, and yeah, definitely, stay in contact. I'll probably reach out to you again in the near future, in regards to the program that you have, and we'll also have all of your contact information and website in the show notes for this show, so people can go there and check out the website.
I'm going to be one of the special speakers for an event that's going to take place in October. It's in Connecticut. And, it's Defeating the Demonic. Jason McLeod is the person who is he was he's the person who puts it together. You know, we've been doing it trying to do it once a week. We did one, once a year. We did one last year, and so we're going to do another one this year in October. And Jason McLeod, his mentors were Lorraine Warner.
Oh yeah.
And Ed Warner. And
Ed
so
and Lorraine, yeah.
he trained under them and has a lot of wonderful stories. And so he is the creator. He's also a demonologist and a best-selling author. So Jason McLeod is he's a great guy. I like the guy. And so that's going to be happening in October. And God willing, we're all going to be here. I'm hoping that I'm not going to be asked to go home. That is to my final resting place. I'm hoping also that the world's still going to be here. I'm hoping no one presses the button and annihilates everyone. Lately, it seems like biblical prophecy is unfolding, and it seems like things are maybe happening in that direction. So it's really important that people to keep a relationship with God and to know that that all things can't be explained.
Yeah.
But,
keeping our faith strong and
absolutely.
holding the light.
Exactly.
Yeah. Father Enright, thank you very much for your time today. As crazy as technology has been today, we made it through this.
Yay!
We have made it through it. We beat evil in some form or another.
Absolutely.
So, yep. Let's keep in touch.
Okay.
And,
we will.
And keep me posted, and I'll reach out to you on some other questions.
One other thing before I forget. Okay, I don't know if you want to cut this out or not, but I published a book a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And I thought that you might want to. In fact, I'll send you a link to it because it could be, yeah, it's a scary book. Anyway, I'll just end with that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll get back to you via email, and yeah, cool.
Okay.
Cool. Everybody, thank you for watching True Ghost Stories, and yeah, it may be Halloween when this comes out, because we will pick the scariest and creepiest of all 5 episodes that will land to be broadcasted on the night of Halloween. This might be one of them. We don't know yet. We'll find out. But until next time, we will see you. Thank you for watching.